"Dad, I think someone hacked your car." The words came out before Isaiah could stop them, trembling in the hallway air like glass about to shatter. Cameron Rivers looked up from his tablet, the soft blue glow of the screen reflecting off his reading glasses. He raised an eyebrow, bemused. "What was that, champ?" Isaiah hesitated, his throat tightened. Savannah Lee, Cameron's girlfriend, was already pouring coffee like she owned the place. The smile on her face didn't budge, but her eyes flicked to Isaiah, just for a second. "I said," he cleared his voice, "I think someone tampered with the Vantage One." The silence that followed was a silence Isaiah knew all too well, the kind that didn't just ignore it erased. The house, tucked in the quiet hills of Boulder, Colorado, looked like a tech mogul's dream. Solar roofing, heated stone floors, voice-activated everything. But under its pristine polish lived a colder truth. This wasn't a home. Not anymore. It had been once. 3 years ago. Before the crash. Before a sheet of black ice on Highway 119 had taken Cameron's wife and son in one breathless instant. Now it was just walls, and breakfast routines too quiet, and a boy who didn't quite belong. Isaiah sat on the stair landing, hugging his knees, watching the hum of life unfold below him like a movie he wasn't in. Cameron, 48, white, brilliant, was finishing his protein smoothie while checking weather data for the day's test drive. Savannah, flawless, flaxen-haired, and never without her phone, flitted about the kitchen as though she'd always lived there. They didn't see him. Not really. Just a shadow in the house. A well-dressed orphan boy taken in for redemption, for penance, for something. 2 years ago, Cameron had signed the papers. "I don't want a replacement," he'd told the agency. "I want to give someone a chance." But Isaiah never felt like he'd been given anything, not really. He was Ethan's ghost, a placeholder with tighter curls and darker skin, sitting quietly through dinners that felt like eulogies. Until last night. That's when he'd seen Savannah entering the garage at 2:14 a.m. She didn't sneak. She strode, confident, focused, and she knew exactly which panels to open on the Vantage One prototype. Not the ones tourists touched during showroom demos, but the ones behind a firewall of encrypted systems. Isaiah had seen enough in his short life to know what acting normal really looked like. That wasn't it. This morning, he'd checked the system logs just like Ethan once showed him, in the only hour they'd ever spent together. And what he saw chilled him. An unauthorized login with admin-level access. Diagnostic overrides hidden behind false normal readouts. He was only 11, but he knew sabotage when he saw it. "Savannah?" Cameron said, chuckling. "Did you tinker with my car in your sleep?" She smiled wide. "Guilty. I was up late, couldn't rest. I went to make sure the garage door was shut. Maybe I brushed something." Isaiah looked at her hard. "You entered override mode. You bypassed the safety queue." Savannah blinked. "Override mode?" Her voice dipped into syrup. "Sweetheart, I don't even know what that means." Cameron sighed, standing. "All right, enough. Isaiah, I appreciate your concern, really, but this car's been checked by 10 engineers. Alex just greenlit today's test route last night. Nothing's wrong." "But," I said enough. The edge in Cameron's voice cut deeper than it should have. Savannah leaned forward, her voice wrapped in gentle condescension. "I know it's hard adjusting, honey. Losing someone you never met but live in the shadow of. That's tough." Isaiah's jaw clenched. "Don't talk like you know me." Cameron turned away, grabbing his keys and jacket. "Let's not make a scene. Big day. I'll be home late. Be good." The door to the garage closed behind him. Savannah smiled, then followed with a sway in her step, and Isaiah sat there, alone with the weight of something he couldn't prove yet. A storm was coming. He could feel it like static in his fingertips. He wasn't Ethan, but if he didn't act now, Cameron would join Ethan in the ground, and that silence in the house would become permanent. He warned them, but no one listened. If you were in his place, would you speak up or stay silent? Leave your thoughts in the comments and like if you believe courage starts young. The door clicked shut behind Cameron, and the low rumble of the garage door swallowed what little warmth was left in the house. Isaiah stayed frozen on the stairs, his hands clenched, mind buzzing with lines of code, faces that didn't trust him, and the gnawing, sickening certainty that something was about to go terribly wrong. He grabbed his hoodie from the banister and slipped it on as he walked down the hallway, every creak of the wooden floor beneath his socks echoing like a challenge. Savannah had vanished into the home office. Of course she had. That's where she always went when she needed to check on media schedules. But Isaiah knew that wasn't all she was checking. He moved to the corner of the kitchen, tapped the side panel near the pantry, and opened a hidden server drawer his foster brother once showed him. It had been a fleeting moment, back when Ethan was still alive and curious and oddly generous to the kid from nowhere who shadowed him through the house one afternoon. Ethan had whispered, "Don't tell Dad, but this is where the real stuff runs." Isaiah never forgot. The screen blinked to life. He pulled up the auxiliary diagnostics of Vantage on everything Cameron had brushed off as grown-up tech. Isaiah navigated swiftly, breathing slow. His fingers danced over the keys. He wasn't a hacker, but he remembered enough of Ethan's walkthrough to know what didn't belong. And what was there now? Absolutely didn't. There was a false positive protocol written into the safety systems. On the surface, the car's braking algorithm showed operational, verified. But behind it, under a thin mask of encryption, was a second layer, a conditional override script, triggering failure during high-stress descent scenarios. Lookout Mountain Road. Isaiah's breath caught. That road wasn't just any test route. It was the same winding death trap where Cameron's wife and Ethan had died. Today's final demo drive for Vantage 1 would take him there alone. He felt the world tilt slightly under his feet. Then a voice behind him said, smooth and soft, "You really should ask permission before poking around in your dad's hardware." Isaiah turned. Savannah stood in the doorway, barefoot, holding a fresh cup of coffee, her nails immaculately painted in mauve. She didn't look angry, not even concerned, just entertained. "Didn't mean to startle you," she added, sipping slowly. Isaiah didn't respond. He quietly slid the panel shut. Savannah walked closer, her movements calculated like someone who'd practiced playing maternal in front of mirrors. "What were you looking at?" she asked, tone light. "You already know." She tilted her head. "I do, but I want to hear you say it. You changed the system last night. Now that's a big accusation." Her smile never reached her eyes. "Do you even know what you saw? You're going to get him killed." "There." He said it. He could feel his pulse in his neck. Savannah stepped closer, her voice dropping. "You think he'll believe you over me? You think he sees you when he looks at that seat at the dinner table?" Isaiah stared up at her. "I think he'll believe code, and logs, and maybe Clarence." Savannah blinked. Isaiah stepped back. "Yeah, I'm not stupid. I know what you're doing, but you made a mistake." "Oh?" she said too quickly. "You forgot that Ethan told me how to pull audit trails, and you forgot that Clarence used to work in DC Cyber Division. I showed him the logs this morning. He's already pulling the exterior camera feeds." Savannah's smile finally cracked. Isaiah turned away. "I don't care if you try to lie to me, but I'm not going to let you kill him." He walked out of the kitchen before she could answer. Outside, the cold air slapped him in the face. The sky over Boulder was pale blue, brushed with streaks of high cloud and the smell of dry pine. He ran across the street, sneakers hitting the pavement hard, heart pounding against his ribs like a warning bell. Clarence's house was a crooked old brick place surrounded by wind chimes, tomato plants, and an American flag faded by time. The door opened before Isaiah could knock. "I saw you running," Clarence said, motioning him inside. "You get anything?" Isaiah held up a flash drive. The old man nodded. "Come on, Benny. Let's save a life." Benny, the overweight golden retriever, wagged his tail like he knew the stakes. Inside, the office smelled like solder and black coffee. Isaiah handed over the drive, and Clarence loaded it into an offline terminal. The logs opened. This is sophisticated," Clarence muttered, scrolling. "This isn't just vandalism. It's sabotage, son." Isaiah swallowed hard. "Can we prove it?" Clarence nodded slowly. "More than that. We can stop it. Maybe, but we're gonna need help from someone inside." "Alex Boone?" Clarence raised an eyebrow. "Cameron's chief engineer?" "He trusts him," Isaiah said. Clarence scratched his beard. "All right, but you're doing the talking. They'll listen to a boy who calls Cameron dad more than some cranky neighbor with a basement full of tubes." Isaiah's stomach tightened. "He's not really my dad." Clarence looked at him for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair. "Blood don't make a family," he said softly. "What you're doing right now, that's what makes you his kid." Isaiah didn't reply. He just stared at the screen, at the lines of quiet, devastating betrayal embedded in neat rows of code. Somewhere on that mountain, a car was warming up, its engine silent, its brakes already programmed to fail. And Cameron Rivers, the man who still hadn't called him son, was driving straight toward it. Isaiah turned to Clarence, his voice suddenly steady. "We have to get him out of that car." Clarence nodded. "Then let's make some noise." The tinny screech of radio static filled the small room as Clarence adjusted the frequency knob on his aging ham radio unit. The thing looked like it belonged in a World War II bunker, with dials and meters blinking amber and green. But Isaiah watched with wide, unblinking eyes. The urgency in the air was electric. Something had shifted. Something real. Clarence leaned in, muttering to himself. Come on, don't fail me now, sweetheart." Benny, his golden retriever, let out a groan and laid his head on the rug, sensing the tension but not the danger. "They cut the internal lines," Clarence said, glancing at Isaiah. "The company's comms are dark. Internal systems only. We need someone inside." Isaiah's mind was already there. Alex Boone. Clarence nodded. "He's the only one with root access to override Savannah's code from within. But he's also deep in the control room. And if she's smart, and trust me, she's already isolated him from the decision net. So we go around it," Isaiah said. Clarence raised a brow. "You said this thing," Isaiah pointed at the radio array, "can override civilian channels. Can it punch through to his personal radio? The old one he keeps clipped on his belt?" Clarence smirked. "Now you're thinking like a son of mine." He began adjusting switches. "But you'll have to be the one who speaks. He's more likely to ignore me." Isaiah stared at the microphone, suddenly unsure. He was just a kid, 11 years old, adopted out of a broken foster circuit, labeled bright but impulsive by more school counselors than he could remember. A took a deep breath. Then he picked up the mic. "Alex Boone, this is Isaiah Rivers." "Repeat, Isaiah Rivers. I need you to listen. It's about the Vantage One." There was silence, then a burst of static. A moment later, a weary voice came through, laced with confusion. "Isaiah, how did you get this frequency?" "There's no time," Isaiah said quickly. "The braking system's been altered. The override was buried under the diagnostics layer. I found it last night after Savannah went into the garage. She used a ghost login admin clearance. There's a kill trigger coded to activate under high-speed descent. If he takes that mountain road, the car won't stop." There was another pause. Then, "How do you know this?" "Ethan showed me how to access the auxiliary logs. I saved the records. Clarence helped me verify it." Clarence leaned into the mic. "It's true, Boone. I ran the trace. It's sabotage. Elegant, too. She knew your system architecture inside and out." Alex's voice sharpened. "Jesus. Cameron's already out. He left 20 minutes ago. He's headed for Lookout. He won't survive the turn," Isaiah said. "You need to warn him." "I've been trying," Alex snapped, "but his onboard systems won't accept my patch. She probably firewalled my access. If I try a brute force override, I could trigger the kill switch early." Isaiah's hands clenched. "Then we need another way. We need to get his attention." Clarence looked at the clock. "You've got maybe 10 minutes before he hits the devil's spine. Once he's in those curves, it's game over." Isaiah stood suddenly. "We go to the ridge, the old radio relay station. We can boost signal. He'll hear us." Clarence hesitated. "It's steep, snow patches, and it's a hike. Then we'd better run." 10 minutes later, Clarence's rusted old Jeep crawled up the frozen service road toward the ridgeline, tires spinning against patches of old ice. Isaiah bounced in the passenger seat, a battered duffel bag full of cables, battery packs, and an emergency beacon jammed between his knees. They reached the ridge just as the sun broke fully across the horizon, sending beams of pale light through the trees. From here, they could see parts of the road winding down the distant slope, a silver thread, disappearing behind granite outcrops. Isaiah bolted out first, scrambling up the incline toward the rotted shell of the radio tower. Clarence followed, slower, carrying a toolkit in one hand and a flare in the other. They got to work without speaking. Clarence rigged the antenna. Isaiah connected the emergency frequency transmitter. His hands shook as he clipped the mic into place. "Okay," Clarence panted. "He's in line of sight now. Try again." Isaiah keyed the mic. "Cameron Rivers, this is Isaiah. Please, please, respond. It's urgent." Nothing. Again. "Dad, please." Silence. Then, finally, a crackle. "Isaiah?" The voice was low, confused, tired. "It's me," Isaiah said, eyes stinging. "You're not safe. The system's been hacked. Savannah reprogrammed the brake failsafe. The logs prove it. If you go into that curve, you won't stop." Cameron's voice returned. "That's impossible. The diagnostics. She bypassed them. She coded it to mask the failure until the moment braking pressure exceeds baseline. You won't know it until it's too late." More silence. Then, "How do you know this?" Isaiah's throat burned. "Because I saw her. Because I checked. Because no one else would." Wind rushed through the trees. Down below, Isaiah could see the glint of sunlight off the Vantage One's polished shell. It was already entering the first switchback. "Dad," he said, voice cracking. "I know I'm not your real son. I know I don't look like Ethan. I know I don't belong in those old family pictures. But I am family. You brought me here. You gave me this name. So I'm asking you as your son, please trust me." There was a long, aching pause. Then, "If I slam the brakes now, I'll flip. Use the emergency kill. Then jump. Roll. Anything. Just don't take that turn." Static again. Then a final word. "Copy." Isaiah dropped to his knees as Clarence launched the flare into the sky, its red smoke billowing over the ridge. Somewhere below, a man was making a decision, one that would decide whether his second son lived with grief or without him. The world held its breath. From the ridge, Isaiah stared at the narrow thread of asphalt snaking around the mountain, eyes locked on the gleaming dot that was the Vantage One. The car surged into the blind curve known locally as Devil's Spine named. Not for drama, but for the dozen fatalities on its record. Cameron's car would either emerge or vanish forever. Then it happened. A small burst of movement. Something dark and compact ejected from the side of the Cara body, followed by a metallic screech as the Vantage One kept going, driverless now, skidding violently against the guardrail before snapping through it entirely and launching over the edge. A distant crunch. Then nothing but the moaning wind and the soft pop of Clarence's flare dying out overhead. Isaiah didn't realize he was screaming until his throat went raw. Clarence grabbed his shoulders. He jumped. He jumped. "You hear me?" They scrambled back down the ridge. Clarence drove like a man half his age, knuckles white on the wheel, taking each curve with desperate precision until they reached the emergency trail access. The Vantage One lay on its side far below the bluff, a plume of smoke curling into the air. But halfway up the slope, tangled in dead bramble and pine needles, was Cameron. Still moving. Isaiah was the first to reach him. "Dad!" he yelled, skidding to his knees beside the man's battered body. Cameron coughed, blood smearing his lip, but his eyes opened. "You little genius," he rasped. Isaiah choked out a laugh, tears mixing with sweat. "Don't talk. Just stay still." I heard you," Cameron whispered. "Every word. You were right. I was wrong." Clarence arrived with a first aid kit and a wool blanket. Together, they stabilized Cameron, wrapping his fractured arm and checking for internal bleeding. It wasn't pretty. His ribs were likely broken, his face bruised, but he was alive. Alive because his son had spoken. Because, for once, he had listened. "Call it in," Clarence said. "But not 911. Not yet." Isaiah blinked. "Why not?" "Because if Savannah finds out he's alive too soon, she'll disappear, and we'll never get the proof we need." Cameron managed a nod. "He's right. She didn't just try to kill me. She covered her tracks. If I die, the company passes to her under emergency proxy. No one questions a grieving fiancé." Isaiah felt the weight of that. "She set it up like a chessboard." Cameron grimaced. "She always did love playing with power." They got him into the back of Clarence's Jeep, laying him carefully across blankets and jackets. As Clarence drove, Isaiah kept looking out the rear window, half expecting another car to appear out of nowhere and run them off the road. Back at Clarence's cabin, they rigged the office into a recovery room. Cameron laid on the cot, barely able to move, while Clarence got on the radio again. "We need someone else," Isaiah said. Cameron turned his head. "There's a man, Stephen Hale, my old legal advisor. He retired, but he still has clearance to the internal servers. And he hates Savannah." Isaiah didn't hesitate. "I'll find him." Clarence stepped in. "No, kid, you're staying put." "No," Isaiah said, standing taller. "You've both done enough. I'm the one she doesn't suspect. She doesn't see me. That's her blind spot." Cameron studied his son through one swollen eye. "He's right." Clarence sighed. "You better come back breathing." An hour later, Isaiah stood at the gates of a quiet suburban home in a neighborhood that smelled like old books and honeysuckle. The nameplate read, S. Hale. He rang the bell. The man who opened the door was in his 70s, white hair slicked back, cane in one hand, eyes sharp as razors. "Unless you're selling faith or fast food," the man said. "You've got 5 seconds." "My name's Isaiah Rivers," the boy said. "Your old client was almost murdered today. I have proof." Helle blinked. "Cameron's alive," Isaiah continued. "But not for long if Savannah finds him." The old man stepped aside. "Get in." Inside, the place looked like a library married a law office. Leather chairs, whiskey decanters. A typewriter that hadn't been touched since Reagan was in office. But Hale moved fast once Isaiah told him everything. "She always was ambitious," he muttered, scrolling through files Isaiah had brought on a flash drive. "But this is first-degree sabotage." He paused. "Where's Cameron now?" "Safe, but weak." Hale nodded. "Then we move fast. I'll file an injunction. Freeze all Vantage One's leadership transfers. If Savannah tries to assume authority, the system will flag her." Isaiah looked up. "That buys us time. But what then?" Hale's eyes gleamed. "Then we go public." 2 hours later, Savannah sat in the Vantage Executive Lounge, sipping chilled Riesling, already rehearsing her statement to the press. A tragic accident, she would call it. The world lost a visionary. I lost my heart. She didn't see the red blinking dot in the corner of the room, an old internal surveillance feed reactivated by a forgotten user login. She didn't know it was streaming live. To the firm's entire legal board, Isaiah stood behind Hale's chair as they watched her. And this time, the silence felt like justice gathering its breath. Savannah Lee had always been careful, meticulous. She never left fingerprints where motives lived. When she walked into a room, she owned it, never rushed, never doubted. And yet, that morning, something was off. She stood at the Vantage boardroom window, the Los Angeles skyline gleaming behind her like a throne of light. Her reflection stared back in the glass, hair flawless, lips precise, eyes cool and unreadable. But her hands, they were shaking. The announcement was set for noon. Cameron's tragic death would be declared. The leadership baton would pass to her. A well-timed email, drafted by his executive assistant, would be sent to the media. The stock would soar, and by nightfall, she'd own the most advanced AI-driven automotive system in the country. But Savannah couldn't shake the feeling. Back at Clarence's cabin, Cameron lay in silence, eyes fluttering open as Isaiah finished relaying the surveillance footage to Hale. The old lawyer had managed to reroute the feed to every board member's secure inbox, and while they hadn't responded yet, the seed had been planted. "You should have told me," Cameron whispered, voice hoarse. Isaiah looked up. "Told you what?" "That you didn't trust her." Isaiah sighed. "You wouldn't have listened." Cameron nodded weakly. "No, I wouldn't have. I was blind." The boy's voice softened. "I just didn't want to lose you, too." They sat in silence for a moment, broken only by the soft hum of the generator outside. Then Clarence returned from the front porch, holding a burner phone. "It's started," he said. "Savannah just submitted the takeover documents to the state corporate registry." Isaiah straightened. "Then, we have to move now." "No," Hale said over speaker. "We wait. Let her walk into it. She thinks she's already won. That's when the trap works best." Clarence leaned against the doorframe. "So what? We just sit?" "No," Isaiah said. "We prepare for what comes after. Because when the storm hits, we'll need to speak, not just expose. We need to tell the world the truth." "You mean about her?" Clarence asked. "I mean about Dad. About Vantage. About what we nearly lost because no one paid attention to the quiet voice in the back seat." Cameron's eyes welled. He tried to speak but couldn't. Isaiah reached into his backpack and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Slowly, he unwrapped it. A pair of worn aviator sunglasses. Cameron blinked. Where did you? They were in Mom's things. I found them last year. Isaiah placed them gently in Cameron's hand. She always said you looked like a hero in them. The air thickened with memory. Back in downtown LA, the vantage board was already murmuring. Hale had sent a follow-up message, marked urgent. Do not confirm leadership change until you've viewed the enclosed footage. Legal liability possible. 3 directors had watched the clip Savannah, glass in hand, smirking about Cameron's death while the world still believed he was in Mexico on a solo sabbatical. One of them, a gray-haired woman named Madeline Knox, styled Hale directly. Is this real? Yes. And he's alive? Yes. Then what do you need? 10 minutes, Hale said. And your vote. Meanwhile, Savannah walked into the boardroom at 11:58, a folder tucked neatly under her arm. She smiled at the assembled team like a widow in a Chanel ad. Thank you all for being here during this difficult time. Isaiah entered at 11:59, not through the front, through the side hallway, guided by Clarence, wearing a Vantage staff badge and carrying a silver tablet. He took the empty seat across from her. Savannah blinked. Excuse me? He didn't respond, just tapped the screen. The projector behind him flickered to life. The footage played, Savannah laughing in the lounge, swirling wine, talking to herself, or so she thought, about how clean it had been, about how predictable Cameron had become, about how even Isaiah wouldn't know what hit him. Every face in the room turned to her. Is this some kind of prank? Savannah's voice cracked. Isaiah stood. No, he said clearly. This is your confession. One of the directors stood. Miss Lee, is there anything you wish to say before we move to suspend your authority? Savannah's voice wobbled. This is absurd. That could be edited. You think some boy? Boy? Isaiah repeated. I'm the son of Cameron Rivers, the only one he has left. That stopped her cold. She turned to him. You're not even biological? Isaiah said, stepping forward. Number, but I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who saved him. And I'm the one who's going to make sure he gets back what you tried to steal. Security arrived moments later. Not for Isaiah, but for her. She didn't resist. Not because she admitted guilt, but because she couldn't see a way out, not with the world watching. As she was escorted away, Isaiah looked at the board. I don't want a title, he said. I don't need credit. But I want you to know something. When you build systems that rely on power, you leave the door open for people like her to manipulate them. My father trusted someone he shouldn't have, and nearly died for it. He paused. Maybe it's time to start listening to the people in the back seat. Madeline Knox rose from her chair, spoken like a true Rivers. Back in the hospital ward where Cameron had been transferred under protection, Isaiah stepped through the door and nodded. It's done, he said. Cameron smiled. Pain and pride etched into every wrinkle. You didn't just save me, he whispered. You saved everything I tried to build. Isaiah took his hand. No, Dad. We saved each other. The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m., but the whispers had started well before noon. Rumors were spinning like wildfire through Silicon Beach and beyond. The CEO of Vantage One was not only alive, but had narrowly survived a deliberate attempt to remove him from power from within. The name Savannah Lee was already trending. Some called it betrayal. Others called it corporate espionage. But Isaiah? He called it a close call. Standing by the hospital window, Isaiah watched the sunlight filtering through the blinds onto his sneakers. He hadn't changed clothes since the night in the cabin. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving behind a strange stillness in his chest, a heavy, hollow kind of victory. Behind him, Cameron shifted in the bed, slowly regaining strength with the help of IV drips and constant monitoring. Doctors said it would take weeks before he could return to full capacity, but physically, he'd make it. Emotionally, that was another battle. You know, Cameron's voice was gravelly but clearer now. I never asked you if you hated me when we brought you in. Isaiah didn't turn. I didn't. Not even a little? I was angry, Isaiah said quietly. But I didn't hate you. Cameron sighed, closing his eyes. Your mom, she was going to adopt you. After the funeral, you stopped everything, Isaiah finished. Finally turning to him. You closed off. You didn't come to the hearings. You didn't call. For 3 years, I thought you just left me behind. Cameron opened his eyes, his expression caught between guilt and grief. I wasn't ready to be your father. Isaiah nodded, jaw tightening. And I wasn't ready to lose mine. But we both got what we didn't want, didn't we? A long silence fell between them. Finally, Isaiah walked over and sat beside the bed. I didn't come back because I needed a dad. I came back because someone had to stop her. And because Mom would have wanted you to live. Cameron blinked rapidly, his voice rough. You called her Mom just now. She was. That single sentence did more than any apology could have. It stitched something back together between them, something bruised and buried. Outside the hospital room, Clarence Hale stood with Madeline Knox and 2 other board members in the corridor, their expressions serious. He's not out of the woods, Madeline said. Even with the footage, there's going to be legal pushback. Savannah's lawyers are already calling this entrapment. She hung herself, Clarence muttered. Don't let her rewrite it. She still has influence. Press contacts, shareholder alliances. That's why we don't let this become a press war, Clarence said, lowering his voice. We make it a human one. Let them see the son. Let them see the boy who warned his father, not the scandal. Knox hesitated. You think America still listens to that? They listen to truth, Clarence replied, when it's told with blood in the voice. Later that day, Cameron sat upright in bed, buttoning the top of a pressed white shirt. His IV had been carefully disconnected for the camera setup. Isaiah stood nearby, silent but steady. A small Vantage production team arranged lights and microphones around them. This is risky, one of the directors murmured. No, Isaiah corrected, meeting their eyes. This is necessary. The red light blinked on. Cameron looked into the camera lens, face pale but resolute. My name is Cameron Rivers, and 3 nights ago, I nearly died in a car designed by my own company. Not because of a glitch, but because of a human decision, a betrayal. I survived. Because my son, my adopted son, refused to stay silent. He turned to Isaiah. This is Isaiah. He's the reason I'm alive. He's also the reason Vantage will never lose its soul again. The video went viral within hours. Across America, people watched as the quiet, brown-skinned boy in glasses leaned forward and said, When I said the system was hacked, I didn't mean just the car. I meant the people around it. We built something powerful. But power attracts people who think they're above consequences. My dad trusted someone he shouldn't have. That almost cost him his life. But we're not going to let it happen again. Isaiah didn't cry. He didn't smile. He simply looked into the camera like someone who had already walked through fire and knew there was still more ahead. By midnight, the board had received over 300,000 messages. Veterans, single mothers, ex-employees, and engineers from across the country wrote in. They didn't just support Cameron, they supported Isaiah. The next morning, Clarence returned to the hospital with coffee and a tired grin. You two made the front page of the New York Times. Want to see the headline? Isaiah raised a brow. Let me guess. The boy in the back seat? Clarence laughed. Close. Son of Silence warns the nation. Cameron chuckled weakly. Sounds like a novel. You might want to rest up, Clarence added, sobering. The SEC is now investigating Savannah's financial ties, and the Department of Transportation wants to audit Vantage One's AI code access history. Isaiah leaned back in his chair. Good. Let them. We've got nothing to hide. But he knew deep down it wasn't over. Because Savannah wasn't the only one with secrets. And the system she tried to exploit? It had been written years ago, with backdoors only a few original coders could have designed. Cameron had once believed he'd built the perfect framework, but Isaiah was starting to wonder what if Savannah hadn't acted alone. As the hospital monitors beeped quietly, Isaiah opened his father's laptop. Lines of code blinked back at him, unfamiliar variables, a few folders he didn't recognize. One marked, Mirage. He clicked, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Isaiah's fingers hovered over the laptop trackpad, his eyes scanning the lines of code buried inside the Mirage folder. The file didn't belong, its metadata predated Savannah's arrival at the company by at least a year. Whoever had embedded this did it long ago, and they had done it silently. Lines of encrypted subroutines linked to neural control overrides, hidden commands mapped to specific geographic coordinates. It wasn't just a kill switch, it was remote access, global, undetectable from the surface. And worst of all, it had Cameron's credentials hard-coded into the admin string. Isaiah leaned back slowly in the chair by the hospital bed. The hum of machines around him felt suddenly louder, like the room was narrowing. His heart thudded against his ribs, the air thickening. His adoptive father hadn't just been the target. He may have been the architect. Or at least, someone had used his name to build the gateway. Cameron stirred in bed beside him. "What time is it?" Isaiah closed the laptop with a soft click. "Almost 5. You should rest." But Cameron sat up instead, rubbing his temples. "I had a dream about the old office, the one before we moved everything to Silicon Beach. There was a server we shut down after the fire, remember? It had the early prototypes of Vantage's neural interface." Isaiah's mind sparked. Was there a backup? Cameron nodded slowly. "In theory, no. But that place, Eden Ridge, it was off-grid. I never signed off on the destruction order. Something told me to leave it alone." Isaiah didn't hesitate. "We need to go there." Cameron frowned. "Now? It can't wait. Whoever set up Mirage wasn't Savannah. She was a user, not a creator. That file was planted before she even worked at Vantage." The words hung between them, weighty and cold. Cameron reached for his phone. "I'll get clearance." Isaiah shook his head. "No calls. If someone's still watching internal comms, we're giving ourselves away." Cameron studied him for a moment. "You've grown up." Isaiah gave a sad smile. "I had to." By sundown, they were on the road. Clarence had arranged a private driver, a retired army buddy named Dennis, who didn't ask questions and didn't care about headlines. The car was unmarked, its windows darkened, its license plates clean. Eden Ridge lay 2 hours northeast of Denver, a forgotten industrial complex nestled in the crags, swallowed by pine and moss. The facility had once housed Vantage's most ambitious R&D unit, before a fire rumored to be electrical sabotage had shut it down. Most assumed the place had been dismantled. But the keycard in Cameron's wallet still hummed with life as they pulled up to the rust-stained gate. Dennis kept watch in the vehicle while father and son stepped into the old compound. The air inside was cold and stale. Glass shards crunched underfoot. Faded logos peeled from the walls like forgotten promises. And yet, there was power. A low hum behind the concrete, barely audible, like a machine holding its breath. Isaiah led the way with a flashlight, weaving past overturned desks and rusting drone shells. In the central chamber, he found it. A server bank half covered by a collapsed ceiling beam, but still blinking with pulse lights. Cameron approached it with reverence. "This is where we dreamed too fast." Isaiah brushed debris off the casing. "Can we boot it?" Cameron hesitated, then knelt and pulled a fiber connector from the back. "Only if you promise me something." Isaiah glanced over. "If what we find here changes the way you see me, I need you to remember I've already lost one son. I don't think I could stand to lose another." Isaiah swallowed hard. "I'm not walking away." The drive spun up. Minutes later, Isaiah's laptop synced with the servers. File after file scrolled past the screen-old designs, neural architecture maps, test logs from the pre-beta phase of Vantage's AI integration. And then, something buried deep in a subfolder labeled BlackRail. Isaiah clicked. What opened was a blueprint for an AI interface far more invasive than anything currently used. It wasn't just driverless, it could adapt to the emotional profile of the user, predict mental decline, override physical inputs. And it was never meant for civilian use. Cameron stared, frozen. "These are DARPA markers," he whispered. "That's not mine. That's military code." Isaiah turned. "Did you partner with the Department of Defense?" "Number," Cameron's voice cracked. "At least, not on this." Isaiah dug deeper. A name flashed on the contributor list: Alan Royce, former Vantage co-founder, thought dead after the Eden Ridge fire. But what if he never died? Isaiah's mind raced. Dad, what if the fire wasn't an accident? What if Royce faked his death to disappear into the code? The thought chilled the room. Cameron's voice dropped. If he's still out there, and if he has control of Miraga, he can access any Vantage vehicle on the road today. Isaiah's face tightened. That's over 200,000 cars. They both stood there, realizing the magnitude. This wasn't just about revenge, or even sabotage. This was about control. The door behind them creaked. Dennis appeared, gun drawn. "We've got company." Cameron grabbed the laptop. Isaiah backed toward the stairwell. A beam of light flashed through the crack in the doorway. Then a voice echoed, slow and cold. "You should have let it burn, Cameron." Isaiah didn't recognize it. But Cameron did. Alan. And just like that, the past stepped out of the ashes. The doorway filled with shadow as Alan Royce stepped into the flickering light. His face was thinner than Cameron remembered, his hair streaked with gray, but the eyes sharp, cold, calculating hadn't aged a day. He wore a long gray coat, unzipped just enough to show a holster beneath, and behind him stood two silent men in black, faces unreadable, weapons slung with practiced ease. "You've come back to dig through my grave," Alan said, voice smooth like sandpaper on silk. Cameron stepped forward, placing himself subtly between Alan and Isaiah. "You were supposed to be dead." "And you were supposed to be smarter than this," Alan replied, gaze shifting to the laptop in Cameron's hand. "I gave you everything, and you buried it in bureaucracy. You buried me." Isaiah felt the tension tighten the room like a noose. Dennis stood frozen near the rear stairwell, gun steady but eyes flicking for cover. "Is that what this is about?" Cameron asked, incredulous. "Revenge?" "It's not revenge," Alan said. "It's reclamation. Mirage was never meant to be a product. It was a prototype for evolution, a way to bypass the error-prone choices of human drivers, officers, even leaders. We were building a future, and you shut it down over a PR nightmare." "A child died during testing," Cameron snapped. "A real future doesn't sacrifice people for performance metrics." Alan sneered. "Emotion. That was always your weakness. That's why I had to burn the project and start again, quietly." "You tried to kill me," Cameron growled. "I wasn't trying to kill you. I was trying to erase a liability," Alan said simply, like it was a line item on a spreadsheet. "But now you've come back, and I have to wonder why." Isaiah stepped forward. "Because I saw what you did. I saw Savannah access the back door. I saw how you used her to implant the override into Dad's car." Alan's eyes narrowed, amused. "Dad?" He glanced at Cameron. "You replaced Ethan with this?" "He didn't replace him," Isaiah said sharply. "He saved me, just like I'm going to save him now." Alan tilted his head, studying the boy. "You're smart, dangerous. I can see that now." He motioned to his men. "Take the laptop. Wipe it." Cameron tightened his grip. "You'll have to kill me first," Alan smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." The lights cut out. The room plunged into darkness. And then chaos. A flashbang cracked through the air, deafening. Smoke filled the lab like a rolling fog. Isaiah dropped low, crawling behind a steel desk. He heard Dennis shouting. The thud of fists, the scuffle of boots on concrete. A gunshot rang out. Cameron's voice called his name then, nothing. Isaiah's lungs burned. He pulled the emergency flashlight from his pocket, clicked it on, and saw Cameron slumped against the server bank, bleeding from a gash on his forehead. "Dad!" Isaiah scrambled toward him. Cameron groaned, still conscious, still alive. "Get out of here, go. I'm not leaving you." Isaiah looked around. The smoke was thinning, and Alan's men were regrouping. Isaiah reached into his coat and pulled the emergency fob Ethan's old security key from his pocket. It had been in his drawer since the funeral. He never thought it still worked. But now, he pressed it to the side panel of the server bank. A mechanical hiss responded. Hidden casing shifted, and a backup drive protected, untouched emerged from within the wall. Isaiah grabbed it. He tucked it deep into his hoodie and turned back to Cameron. "Can you walk?" Cameron nodded through the pain. Isaiah helped him up. "We go out the maintenance shaft." The one marked fiery Gressy saw it in the schematics. They moved fast. Dennis emerged from the smoke, limping but alive. "Truck's gone," he said. "But I've got the keys to the backup vehicle. We don't need to outrun them," Isaiah said. "Just buy enough time to expose them." Alan's voice rang out from the smoke behind them. "You can't run from this. You think the world cares who built the monster? They only care who owns it." Isaiah looked back one last time, staring into the cloud of dust where Alan stood, his silhouette flickering in the emergency lights. "We're not running," Isaiah said softly. "We're rebuilding." They burst through the side door into the freezing Colorado night. The spare vehicle was an old pickup hidden beneath a camo tarp. Dennis floored it as soon as they were inside, the tires spitting gravel as the truck tore down the mountain pass. Cameron sat slumped in the passenger seat, pressing a rag to his temple. Isaiah held the backup drive tight in his lap, heart pounding. They had the evidence, proof of Mirage's true origin, proof of Alan's survival, and maybe, just maybe, a path to justice. "What do we do now?" Dennis asked, eyes locked on the road. "We go to the one place Alan won't expect," Isaiah said. "We go public, but on our terms." "You want the media involved?" Cameron asked, voice weak. "Not just the media," Isaiah said, voice low but steady. "We're taking this to the Senate Oversight Committee." Cameron turned to look at him, the weight of disbelief and hope clashing in his expression. "You're just a kid. I'm your son," Isaiah said, "and no one silences us again." The truck vanished into the winding road, the lights behind them dimming into distant ghosts. Ahead, a new storm brewed not of bullets or betrayal, but of truth, and this time, they were ready to fight for it. 3 weeks later, under a steel-gray Washington sky, Isaiah stood beside Cameron on the steps of the Hart Senate office building. Cameras clicked, microphones leaned in like vultures sensing blood, and the press pool behind the barricades stirred with quiet urgency. Dennis waited by the curb, watching every movement, his hand never far from his hip. Cameron adjusted his tie, his face pale but composed. The bandage was gone, but the scar over his brow remained a line of truth cut into flesh. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked Isaiah quietly. Isaiah nodded. "If we don't speak now, someone else's kid dies in silence." "You sound like Ethan," Isaiah swallowed. "I never met him, but I hope I make him proud today." The doors opened. The marble hallway inside echoed with their footsteps as they were led into the chamber. The committee room smelled of old wood and tension. Names etched in brass lined the wall. Senators, former officials, men and women who once believed in systems that didn't always believe in them. A clerk called Cameron's name. He stepped forward, hand on the Bible, swore the oath. The room quieted. He began. 3 years ago, I lost my wife and my son, in a crash I was told was an accident. I believed that lie. I clung to it because the alternative, that someone tampered with the vehicle's system, that my own company's technology was turned into a weapon, was too much to face. Isaiah watched him, heart steady, fingers wrapped around the flash drive in his pocket. "But a child doesn't lie," Cameron continued. "Isaiah warned me. He said the system was hacked, and I jumped out of that car seconds before it accelerated off the ridge." The room reacted, gasps, murmurs. "Today, I bring proof," Cameron said, raising the drive. "Not conspiracy, not theory, code, logs, voice files, everything Alan Royce built in secret." A senator leaned forward. "Mr. Royce is presumed dead." "He isn't," Isaiah said, stepping forward. His voice didn't waver. "He staged his death and has been building an upgraded version of Mirage. He planted an override in my father's car. I saw it happen." "And how did a child like you come to be involved?" another senator asked. "Because I live there," Isaiah replied. "I'm his adopted son. I'm also the son of a mechanic who died working 3 jobs before someone even knew his name. I know what it feels like when people assume you don't matter." The words hit harder than any chart or graph. Cameron sat back, letting Isaiah take the stage. "Alan Royce didn't just build a tool," Isaiah said. "He built a future where decisions are stripped of empathy. He believed control was more important than life. That's not just dangerous, it's un-American." A hush fell over the chamber. The lead senator leaned forward. "And what do you want from this committee?" Isaiah looked her straight in the eye. "Accountability, an investigation, and full transparency into every contract Mirage ever touched. No more silence, no more cover-ups. The system was hacked, but it remembered." He held up the flash drive. "And now, so will all of you." What followed was a flurry of activity. Hearings convened. Subpoenas were issued. Cameron's testimony became headline news. CEO turns whistleblower. Adopted son uncovers tech sabotage. News anchors replayed Isaiah's words. Civil rights groups rallied behind him. The public, tired of faceless systems and invisible power, found a face they could believe in, a boy who'd refused to stay quiet. Meanwhile, Alan Royce went underground. But even in hiding, he saw the damage. Investigators raided his last known base of operations. Files were uncovered, accounts frozen, collaborators arrested, and while no one could confirm his whereabouts, his empire cracked at the seams. Back home, in the quiet of the Colorado foothills, Isaiah sat on the porch with Cameron. The air smelled like rain and wood smoke. "You think he's gone for good?" Isaiah asked. Cameron shook his head. "Men like Royce don't disappear. They wait. They adapt. But next time, the world won't be blind. And if he comes back, then he'll find we're not the same people he left behind." Isaiah nodded, then hesitated. "You ever wish you hadn't adopted me?" Cameron turned, eyes clear. "Every day, I miss Ethan. But you didn't replace him. You reminded me what it means to fight again." Isaiah looked down, unsure how to respond. But Cameron reached over, placed a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't save just my life, son. You gave it back to me." The porch light flickered on as evening fell. Somewhere in the house, a jazz record hummed low Ethan's favorite. Isaiah leaned back, staring up at the wide Colorado sky. The fight wasn't over, but tonight, they'd earned a pause. Justice, like healing, came slowly, but it came, and this time, it had a name.